Welcome to ABC English Story. You are listening to our English podcast. Let's learn English with fun stories and conversations. Stay tuned.
All right, jumping into a deep dive today on the legacy of, well, the legacy, I guess you could say, of Martin Luther King Jr.
Definitely a legacy.
It's one of those things, though, right? Everyone knows the I Have a Dream speech. They know the name. They know the marches.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much more to it. And I'm really excited about the source you found on this one, which is this YouTube video transcript that uses his life, MLK's life, to teach English.
Interesting.
Which I thought was really fascinating. So
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
we're going to kind of use that as a jumping off point.
Yeah.
But, really kind of unpack some of these things. So
Absolutely. And I think to really grasp the weight of his journey, we have to rewind a bit, right? Go back to the world he was born into, the South, during his childhood. It was a different world.
Yeah.
Segregated buses, schools. I mean, they were separate. They were unequal. Racism. It was just a fact of life.
Hard to even wrap your head around that. The source, it actually tells the story. When MLK was a kid, he was playing with this white friend, Warren.
Okay.
And they were just kids, right? Everything's fine.
Right.
And then Warren's mom finds out.
Oh, wow.
And that's it, just like that.
Yeah.
Their friendship is over just because MLK was black.
And that's just it. It wasn't an isolated incident, right? This was daily life for millions.
Yeah.
It's those constant encounters with racism that really began to mold his worldview from such a young age.
Yeah, it makes you think, too, about those formative experiences.
Right, exactly.
And how they just stick with you. And then you have someone like Gandhi coming into the picture, talking about nonviolent resistance. Did that click with MLK right away? Was that like an instant connection?
Yeah, Gandhi's teachings were really a revelation for him. They offer this powerful alternative, right?
Yeah.
To this cycle of violence and oppression and this idea of dismantling injustice through just unwavering courage and moral authority. It really, really resonated with his own beliefs and really gave him a framework.
Okay, so we have this sort of philosophical underpinning, right? But then let's talk about putting it into action. The Montgomery bus boycott.
Right.
Huge moment.
It was a turning point.
I mean, Rosa Parks
Absolutely.
refusing to give up her seat. I mean, that image, it's iconic.
The image is seared into our collective memory.
But it was just the start, wasn't it?
Yeah. The boycott, sparked by her incredible courage, that was a turning point. It showed the power of collective action, nonviolent resistance.
Yeah.
But it also ignited something bigger.
Oh.
And that was the formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
SCLC.
Or SCLC, with King at its helm.
This is where you start to see his, strategic mind, right?
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't just about the boycott anymore. It's about building a lasting movement.
It was about building a movement.
Yeah.
And that movement quickly expanded beyond just the buses,
Okay.
Think about Little Rock 9. Can you imagine being one of those students?
Wow.
Walking into a school, faced with those mobs, and all because you wanted an education.
I mean, talk about courage. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It reminds us this wasn't just a Southern fight. This was a fight to dismantle segregation across America.
And I imagine, as this movement grows, it's not always going to be completely unified, right? The source even mentions, some disagreements about the best path forward.
It was never a monolithic movement.
Right.
Different perspectives, different lived experiences.
Right.
All shaping how people viewed this fight for equality.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about this era, of course, without talking about Malcolm X.
Right.
And the Black Panthers.
Yeah, Malcolm X, I mean, what a figure.
Powerful voice.
The video talks about how he really challenged MLK's commitment to nonviolence, saying, that Black people had a right to defend themselves against oppression.
That must have been a really tough position for both sides to be in.
It was, yeah. I mean, Malcolm X, he was advocating for Black empowerment,
Right.
And he saw the limitations, really, of integration in a society that was still riddled with systemic racism.
Okay.
He argued that true liberation was about Black people controlling their own institutions, their own destinies.
Yeah, so it's not just about, like, sitting at the lunch counter.
Exactly.
It's about owning the restaurant.
It's about owning the restaurant, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
And then you have the Black Panthers who, I mean, they were ready to, like, take that and run with it, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers, they emerged from this deep frustration and anger in many Black communities, especially in the North.
Okay.
Where, poverty, police brutality, these things were rampant.
Right.
So, they're organizing these armed patrols to monitor police activity. They're providing these essential social services.
And they're directly challenging what they perceived as a system designed to keep them oppressed.
So you have MLK preaching nonviolence. You have these other groups saying, enough is enough. We have to fight back.
Right.
Like, how do you reconcile those two things?
And it's important to remember that King's philosophy, it wasn't, static.
Okay.
He was learning. He was evolving.
Yeah.
He was grappling with the complexities of this struggle.
Yeah, right.
And he sees the conditions in these northern cities, the poverty, the despair, and he starts to connect the dots.
The video even talks about this shift in his later years to focus on poverty, calling it like a form of violence itself.
Because he recognized that poverty, it wasn't just about a lack of money.
Okay.
It was a form of oppression,
right?
Denial of opportunity.
Right.
And it was often rooted in deep systemic discrimination.
So it's not just about separate water fountains anymore.
Exactly.
It's about a system that's designed to hold people back.
It's about a system. And that realization, I think, led him to some pretty controversial stances.
Well, yeah, I mean, like his opposition to the Vietnam War.
Right.
That's a big leap, isn't it?
It is.
To go from civil rights to like speaking out against a war.
But he saw the Vietnam War, as this symptom of a much larger problem.
Okay.
Militarism, right?
Yeah.
This focus on violence over social uplift.
Okay.
He saw the connection between the struggle for racial justice here at home.
Yeah.
And the fight for peace abroad. And he was willing to risk his, his popularity, his reputation.
That's a bold move to challenge your own government on something as divisive as a war.
It is. And it didn't win him any favors.
Oh, I bet.
Called unpatriotic, a communist, even a traitor by some.
Wow.
But, King, he understood the price of silence.
Yeah.
And to stay silent, he thought, in the face of injustice, anywhere, it would be to betray his own conscience.
And tragically, you look at his life, that commitment to justice, it ultimately cost him his life. It's April 4th, 1968, Memphis. MLK assassinated. Just, it's tough to grapple with, right?
Devastating. I mean, just the grief, the anger, just this wave of loss across the country, It wasn't just a loss for the movement. It was a loss for America, really.
Yeah.
And, cities erupted in riots, all this pent-up frustration, the injustice.
Just boiling over.
Yeah, it exploded.
Makes you wonder, looking back at everything we've talked about, did it work? Did his dream come true? Did his sacrifice actually lead to lasting change?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? That hangs over his whole legacy. And it's not an easy one to answer.
Right.
I mean, we've seen incredible progress.
Yeah.
Right? Since his time.
Yeah.
I mean, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, like huge victories, reshaped the legal landscape.
Right.
You have black politicians, black CEOs, like representation that was unimaginable back then.
And yet you still see these headlines, and it's like, man, how far do we still have to go?
Exactly. Systemic racism, police brutality, the economic inequality, it's all still there.
Yeah, and that image the video used, it's like being black in America is like wearing shoes that don't fit.
It's such a powerful way to put it.
It is.
Because you kind of get used to it. You push through that discomfort, but it never truly goes away.
Yeah, it gets at that like tension, of never being quite equal.
Mm-hmm.
Even after all this time, all this progress, it makes his fight feel so relevant even now.
And that's his legacy, right? It's not just about remembering, it's about action. It's a call to action for all of us.
So for someone listening, right, and they want to honor his legacy, but it all feels so big, so overwhelming, what can one person even do?
Well, it starts with acknowledging the problem. It's about educating yourself, educating others.
Right.
It's about challenging injustice when you see it, whether that's calling out a racist joke or advocating for policies that promote actual equity.
It's about realizing those little things, they do make a difference.
They do.
Just like those sit-ins, just like Rosa Parks on that bus.
Exactly. King's life teaches us that change, you know? It's not instant.
Right.
It takes effort. It takes commitment.
Yeah.
It takes a belief in that possibility of a better world.
It's about picking up that torch, and continuing that march.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. Because that dream of equality, that's worth fighting for.
It is. Maybe it's time for all of us to think about how we can embody that.
It really is. And that is a powerful thought to leave us on. So thank you, as always, for joining me on this deep dive. And until next time, just keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for that more just and equitable world.